Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. A very, very warm welcome to the Coach Me Community Cafe. We're delighted to have you with us today for today's session on coaching for change and transformation. As we come together in this global space, we're thrilled to welcome our special guest, Alex Coward, who will be sharing insights from her groundbreaking research into the 8 decision-making capabilities used by facilitators on transformational change. So get comfortable, grab a coffee or tea, and get ready for a rich and inspiring discussion. We're so glad you could come here with us to explore what it takes to create lasting and meaningful change. Welcome, and over to you, Alex.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. First of all, can I just check that you can hear me? Give me a thumb up or a little thumb icon. Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Awesome. Look, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share some of the insights from my thesis. I have to say it is it's a pleasure and a privilege to meet so many people from around the globe. And I do hope we get to connect on LinkedIn after this. So I'd like to begin by saying, why did I choose this topic? You know, when I was a little girl, I thought I was going to be a teacher. I really did believe I was going to be a teacher. And I didn't end up as a teacher, actually. I ended up in banking, as far away from teaching as you can possibly imagine. But slowly and surely, I found myself into HR. And over time, I started to become a trainer and then a facilitator and then a leadership coach. And eventually, I found myself on an executive master's program at HEC in Oxford. And I chose the program because originally it was called Coaching and Consulting for Change. And I thought, who wouldn't want a master's degree in coaching and consulting for change? So I signed up and off I went. And I had the pleasure of going through many, many different modules. And as a consequence of that, I met many different facilitators. And even though it was two of the most prestigious universities in the world, I wouldn't say that everyone was a good facilitator. And I think, you know, it made me wonder, what is it that makes for a good facilitator as opposed to a lecturer or a teacher or just somebody who's trying to impart knowledge? And so that's why I decided to write my thesis on facilitation. And if you wouldn't mind bearing with me, I'm going to share a document and ask if, can you see that document? Give me a thumb up. Anybody give me can we see? Yeah, you can't see. Ali can't see that. Sarah, can you help with the sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I can see the document.
Yes. Can
Yes.
anybody not see? You can see it now, Ali. Probably just a little bit of a delay. Thank you. Okay. So what do we have here? This is the title, actually, Making Sense of Facilitation, Insights from Professional Facilitators of Transformation. And the thing is that, oh, this is fun, isn't it? I have that. There we go. With all thesis, there's a problem. And the problem was this. Even though facilitation is ubiquitous, it's like Coca-Cola, you know, everybody uses the word facilitation to mean anything and everything from having a meeting to running a workshop. And there are so many manuals and how-to guides. There are books, there are whole book aisles devoted to this type of thing. Actually, there's not very much research into how facilitators make decisions, and particularly how they make decisions on the fly. I don't know if you've noticed this, and whether you've been in situations like this, but actually it's quite exhausting to be able to do this, to hold the space with so many people. And you wonder, don't you, what is it that makes facilitators choose to take a particular route? And that's what I was really interested in. I guess selfishly, I wanted to know, how can I be the very best facilitator in service of others? So some of it was to do with the gap, of course, but mostly it was kind of selfish, I think, as most theses are. How do I become the very best facilitator? And what I hope to share with you today is some of that knowledge. And by all means, use this if it's useful for you. And if it's not, well, we got to meet some new people from around the globe. So, how about that? So, what I would like to share with you is, I think there's just a little bit of a delay on these slides changing. There we go. So, the question that I asked was this: what do the experiences of professional facilitators reveal about the practice of facilitating transformation in groups? Now, if I break that down, this was an experience, a lived experiences thesis. It was something called phenomenological research, meaning how do people experience this for themselves? I chose this because there was such a lack of academic research. It would have been quite difficult to do a quantitative study. And besides which, I'm more of a qualitative researcher anyway. So it was kind of nice to do this from an interview point of view. Now, what I would love to do is to invite you to go into breakout rooms. Sarah has worked out a little roster of about 4 people per room. And I'd love you to think about this question. Why are you here today or tonight or this afternoon? And what would you like to learn from me and from one another? Like, why are you giving up an hour of your time to learn about this particular subject? So, Sarah, would it be okay if we can send people to Zoom rooms for about, say, 6 minutes?
Sure, no problem. I'll just set that up now.
Thank you. How are we going, Sarah?
Okay, and that should put people in the rooms. Okay, you've got 6 rooms and there's roughly 23 participants, so they've all been allocated a room. Okay. Okay, the rooms will close in about 50 seconds.
And I think also in the meanwhile, we had somebody new join the group. So if you joined a room without any people, that's because we were in little breakout rooms there. All right. So you'll see the screen. Can you still see the slides on the screen?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. I'll try sharing this again. How about now?
I'm hoping something will come up. I think there's just a slight delay. Yes, it's just arrived now on screen.
Perfect. All right. So, anybody like to share? Did they meet any friends in the Zoom room? Did anybody have a burning desire to share with the group why they're in the session tonight?
I'll go.
Yeah, please.
So I was explaining that for me, facilitation is really, really important. I used facilitation skills in my times in consulting, and I'm still using them. And I want to add something I didn't say in the breakout room. I feel I really like, and I have this ability to get the best out of people. For me, consulting is, yes, finding solutions, finding, the right strategy approach, addressing problems. However, many times the solution sits with the client, but they cannot get it, from their brain, from their head. So I like how I push people, or I drive people, how to extract the best out of them. So facilitation, be it in a brainstorming session, or a product innovation or product design, or Scrum session. So is important in my field, and I love doing it as well. Secondly, we learned that team coaching, because I'm pursuing certification in coaching. For team coaching, facilitation skills are complementary and important. So throughout a team coaching engagement, sometimes the coach finds the need to do some facilitation workshops to increase communication, or to bring everybody to agree to something. So it's equally important.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for sharing. Never easy, particularly in a new group. So what did I have a look at? I had a look at what is facilitation. I looked at facilitation as a relational practice, meaning, it's about the relationships between people. I looked at facilitation in groups. I looked at group development theory, facilitator development theory, change theory, which was quite interesting. And I'll maybe briefly touch on that. And what I was really interested in was transformational facilitation. Now, for those of you who have to leave really quickly, let me tell you that this is book club. Even if you don't go and, do any of the academic research, these 4 books will really help you. The Sam Kainer book, what I can tell you is there are so many skills in there, tricks for facilitators, how to use flip charts. Very good book. The Adam Kahane book, Facilitating Breakthrough, the very interesting one. What Adam Kahane talks about is that most facilitation is top down. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. So very much the leader's in charge, and everybody sort of like falls in line. Teaching is a good example of vertical facilitation, but it's not as inclusive. It's actually, let's make a decision and move on. And then the other type of facilitation is everybody is involved, everybody is included, and it takes a very, very long time to get anywhere. And what Adam's book does is said when to use which one, and how to, if you like, be a little bit strict and more controlled versus being a little bit more open and allowing space for people. So that's a good book as well. Action learning, again, lots of exercises in here, but this is really about learning through experimentation. And then the skilled facilitator, which has been around for a long time, that's very much like process facilitation. So how do you sort of like, you know, make sure that that we follow the process, if you like. So if you take nothing else from this session today, grab those books. It really will help. So the questions I asked of the people are, what does facilitation mean? The big one that I was interested in is, how do you make sure that individuals in the room, I think this goes to your point as well, Michael, how do you make sure that the individuals in the room and the group are concurrently being served? Sometimes you find that individuals don't speak up. Sometimes you find individuals who do all of the talking and then the rest of the group feels that it's shut down. So how do you balance those two positions? I was very interested in that. And what gets in the way of facilitation, as well as if I put the other way around and they were interviewing me, what would they be interested in? And also anything else that they wanted to talk to. So I spoke to Lisa. Lisa, I went to the school of Lisa, actually, Lisa Doig of Corporate Evolution. She is what I would call a transformational facilitator. So she's not really interested in training. She's interested in fundamental like how a caterpillar goes into a butterfly. You know, the caterpillar will never ever become a caterpillar ever again once it's transformed, but the DNA is basically the same. So the work that Lisa does is much deeper, and she works with energy. So she's looking for, you know, how do we create that aha moment? You know, how do we tap into that unconscious potential that people, you know, they have, but for whatever reason, it's holding them back. So so I did quite a long interview with Lisa. Very impressive. And if ever you get the chance to work with Corporate Evolution, I recommend it. And then Peter. Now, Peter is he's the CEO of his own consultancy company. He's been around for a very long time. I would say he's very typical of the vertical facilitation. So whatever the boss is, you know, whatever the boss wants, this is sort of like, you know, where we start, and then it's very top down. He's also big on psychological safety, meaning, you know, it's safe for people to speak up. But ultimately, he tends to work with big corporate, and he's found that vertical type of facilitation, lots of clarity actually, is very important and very helpful. Now, Marcus, I've given you a pseudonym for Marcus. I gave everybody the opportunity either to use their own name or to use a pseudonym. And some people chose that because they didn't actually know until they read the thesis, you know, whether they would say something that they didn't want to be quoted for. I don't think any of them, having read it, would say, yes, keep the pseudonym, but because that's how I set this up, I've called him Marcus. Marcus is a very highly regarded facilitator. He's been the chairman of a large facilitation organization, and he's very much a process facilitator. So even though he talks about the fact that, you know, it's never the whole story, the process, he's a big believer that if you have clear process, clear method, and you follow that, you really can't go wrong. So if you think Lisa's all about the energy, and Peter is all about the structure, and Marcus is very much about the process. And then we have Linda. Linda considers herself to be an organic facilitator. So she's gone along in her facilitation life, and she's collected lots of tools and lots of things, if you like. And she is very, very well prepared. Whenever she goes into the room, She calls it feng shuiing the room. So she makes sure that the room is exactly the way that she wants it. The chairs are where she wants them. The tables are where she wants them. The flip charts are where she wants them. But then beyond that, she is very happy to let things go. So what she does, she controls the controllables. That's what how Linda describes it. And so for her, order and structure is really important, but then what happens in the room is more organic than that. And then Max, the reason Max gave me a pseudonym is because he works in what I would consider to be the highest risk facilitation that I've ever come across in my life. And it's something called positive deviance. I don't know if you know what positive deviance is, but I think you know what a bell curve is, a distribution curve where it goes up and then it comes down. Usually you see it with performance management. So many people get a performance rating of 1, and so many get a performance rating of 2, and the majority of them get the performance rating of 3, and then fewer people. So you get like this curve. Positive deviance is the most extreme positive end of that distribution curve. And the very famous example of positive deviance is that there was hunger in Vietnam, and they brought in positive deviance facilitators because what they wanted to know is, why was it that some people who had the same amount of access to food did better than other people? And so what the positive deviance facilitators do is they go into the villages and they work with the people who are doing it really well. And then they take those skills and they help the people who are doing it really well to help the people who are not doing it so well. And they work with some very, very tricky situations. They work with domestic violence, they work in prisons, they work with poverty, they work with violence. And one of the things that really came out of the facilitation conversations with Max is it's about purpose and negotiation. And this was a big surprise to me because I hadn't really considered that facilitation could involve such a thing as purpose and negotiation. And one of the things that Max spoke about is sometimes you have to renegotiate the purpose with the sponsor because the people are not ready yet. He gave us an example, a situation where they were working in, I think it was Romania, and there was a lot of violence, and they were brought in by the UN, United Nations, and the United Nations said the purpose is to stop the violence, but they had to negotiate that down to men and women working together to build a playground. Why? Because to stop domestic violence was too big a purpose. So they had to renegotiate that purpose into something that was smaller, and then they could build on that, and then they could build on that. So this was a big eye-opener for me. Monty, Dr. Monty Badami, he of a similar mind to Max. He's an anthropologist, and so when he talks about facilitation, he said you have to be acutely aware of your power as a facilitator. You have to be aware of your power, your privilege, your culture, your gender, your ability, all of those things you have to be acutely aware of. And so one of the things that he is an advocate for is trauma-informed care, and being very, very clear that everybody has the right for dignity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging. And so now we really start to see that the role of the facilitator is incredibly sensitive, powerful, and we need to take great care because we have so many people in our sphere that we are responsible for. So again, this was probably one of the, the others I think you can read in the book, but this, not so much. This one, I think we could all do a better job in this space. And then Sonia, she's a HR director, or she was a HR director before she went out and became a facilitator. And she was really clear that the group is actually a collection of individuals. And she said, the only time that I think of a group as a group is when I'm a speaker at a conference and it's a sea of people and I'm talking to people as though they were one. And once again, I thought, what an incredible realization, you know, to actually think that this is not a group. This is a collection of individuals who then have the responsibility to operate in a group context. So some very insightful conversations that I had with these people. So I'm not expecting you to be able to read this yet, but what I want to show you is that from these interviews, I came up with a facilitator decision-making model, which I designed around a circumplex. And it looks a little bit like this. We have dimensions. On the far left-hand side, you can see that there are task dimensions, task-focused dimensions. And on the far right-hand side, what you can see is that there are people-focused dimensions. And at the top of this circumplex, what you can see is there's straightforward work. So, you know, it's pretty straightforward to ask the question, what's the purpose of this session, for example? And at the bottom of this circumplex is the intricate work, the responsibility for psychological safety, the responsibility for dignity, the responsibility for power. So we have these 4 dimensions. And then we have movement, if you like. So you can see that there are arrows between task-focused and straightforward work, and task-focused and intricate work, meaning the task can be easier, more straightforward, or the task can be harder, more intricate. Similarly, on the people side, the people experience can either be, you know, more straightforward, or it can be more complex. And so that's what the directional intensity is talking about, is that, you know, we can't just think it's a task, or we can't just think it's communication, because these things get harder as we move closer to that responsibility part of facilitation. And then in the center, what came out actually is that we've got facilitated group work, but some of the facilitators, one of the facilitators, 2 actually, said, we don't do enough co-facilitation. We don't do enough learning from one another as facilitators. Why? Because it's easier to control if we are doing this on our own. We have more say, we have more sway, but in actual fact, the work that we do with some groups now is we try and balance out the group. So we try and have 1 man and 1 woman in a facilitated session to balance out the gender, or we might have a young person and an older person to balance out, you know, to balance out age. So this was a really interesting one. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I was in London facilitating a workshop, and I was running the executive team. And then on day 2 and 3, somebody I'd never met before, he was running the all-in workshop. And I had the privilege actually of being able to observe his workshop, even though he's a different company and they were not exactly related. And at the end of that, I asked him if he could make some observations about the executive group that I was working with, to see if anything that he noticed would help me in the next session with them. Wow. how incredibly powerful, you know, that I got to have that opportunity to share ideas with another facilitator, because usually it's a solo club. It's a pretty lonely club. The facilitator goes, the facilitator does the work. So those things were quite interesting to pull out. And then within this, you can see that I've got the domains. So if I start at the left-hand side, preparation, I would say preparation, it's a task-focused piece, generally speaking. And here I've said laying solid foundations for the work by seeking to understand the audience in advance. Lisa said 60% of the work of facilitation happens before you even get into the room. 60%. That's the conversations that you have with people, that's meeting people. Peter, who his business is psychometrics mainly, he uses psychometric data to understand what's going on in this group, whether it's 360 data or just personality data, but data actually having some, you know, some strength before we go in there. Linda, I said before, she talks about feng shui in the room, you know, making sure that things are set up and controlling the controllables. So this one's really interesting, designing the experience and planning a process that's flexible enough to accommodate circumstantial change as it arises. My approach for preparation, whenever I run a workshop, as a minimum, I try to have a 30-minute interview with every participant, if not 360 data, if not personality data, but some way of asking the people in the room, help me to understand what's a good experience from a facilitation point of view, and what would you rather not do, so that I know how to structure the session and keep people engaged. So preparation, task focused, fairly straightforward, and it will really help you if you go into the room knowing what people want to get out of this. So if you think back to 20 minutes ago, I asked you to pop into a room and say, you know, why did you come here? What do you want to get out of this? Why? So that I can get a sense, or you can get a sense of, you know, are we headed in the right direction? And if not, then we can change as the circumstance arrives. Somewhat between the people and the task is the purpose. What's the higher purpose here? And teams, generally speaking, if you said to them, what's the purpose of this team? Most people wouldn't know. Most people behave like the United Nations or Congress, with each person lobbying for their constituent. But in actual fact, what we really want to establish is, why are we here as a collective, not a bunch of individual people who all report to that leader, or a bunch of individual people who are all lobbying for that thing. What's the higher purpose? Because without this, groups will behave as if the purpose is something else, as if it's to take over, or as if it's to sit on their iPhone and, you know, do emails whilst the rest of the meeting's going on. What's the purpose of this group coming together? To the right of that, we have impact. Now, this one is very, very important. And this is the one that I said Monty spoke about, which is being acutely aware of your role, your impact, your presence, your power, and regularly and proactively addressing your triggers. Now, one of the things that happens is transference. You go into a room and somebody reminds you of somebody, and suddenly it's difficult to connect with that person. That's your stuff. And you have to do something with your stuff. You can't come into the room as a facilitator and put your stuff on someone else. And it's really, really tricky. One of the things that I would encourage anybody who wants to be in facilitation is do your own work. Do your work on you. Whether it's, you've heard of coaching supervisors. It's a little bit like coaching supervision. You know, if you are triggered by something, or, you know, for me, I don't like criticism, I don't like judgment. And hey, I've set myself up as a facilitator. Wow, that's trigger central, isn't it? You know, people are going to criticize me, people are going to judge me. So therefore, I have to do my work to make sure that if I'm feeling a little bit out of sorts, that I do something, that I don't bring that into the room, that that I respect that whatever's happening in the room is about other people, it's not about me. Communication. This one's about making what I call non-violent communication choices. Non-violent communication comes from the work of Marshall Rosenberg. This is really about, it also talks to negotiation, actually. Everything is a negotiation. That's the way we look at communication. If you look at William Ury on TED.com, brilliant person, another example of nonviolent communication. But we need to be really, really clear about how we speak, when we speak, what we advocate for, when we inquire, really understanding that we need to create space for communication exchanges to emerge. This is not about me, a facilitator, being successful or popular or any of those things. My job is to facilitate communication amongst the group. Intuition. Now we're starting to move into the really tricky stuff. We're moving into the intricate workspace. And this is about deeply drawing on your senses, reading the room, believing in the wisdom of the crowd. You know, even if people are not saying anything, there's a lot going on. I just spent a month in Fiji, and the Fijian people, beautiful, gentle, respectful people. I had to work extra hard coming from Australia, you know, where we're direct and straightforward. I had to work extra hard to understand the wisdom of the group, and to really know that actually, if something goes wrong, this is just an opportunity. It's feedback. It's feedback for me to learn and to then further be in service of the group. Down at the bottom, difficult, very difficult, responsibility, creating that safe and inclusive workspace, making sure that if there's resistance in the room, that we treat that respectfully, and being a good conduit for conflict. You'll probably, I don't know if you've seen Radical Candor or Psychological Safety by Amy Edmondson, but this is really good work for you to actually look at and say, how do I create the space such that, you know, I am holding the responsibility of the group? Because if you can do that, then we can move into creativity. Then we can move into, you know, tapping into that unconscious potential. And of course, that comes from the processes. There are so many processes that you could use. What I would say is don't rely on the processes, but always have some. Always have some structures and frameworks and models and tools to guide you. But please don't be led by the processes. One of the worst things Adam Kahane says in his book is when facilitators say, just trust the process. You know, the process is only there to help you. It's not something to be trusted. It's not something to be followed like an agenda or a bouncing ball. You know, process is there just to help to guide us through the, you know, to help guide us through the, whatever it is, the agenda, the purpose. So what did I find? What did I find? You know, of the 6 people that I interviewed, there was no one size fits all. Some people were process, some people were energy, some people were organic, some people were structured. The facilitated decision making, it's not linear, it's not sequential. So even though I've drawn it in a nice circle, it kind of like goes backwards and forwards and up and down. Facilitators make decisions in both conscious and unconscious ways. So sometimes we deliberately make a choice, and sometimes, that facilitation on the fly, we don't even know why. Why have we made this? But actually, what it is, we have taken in all of the information from the group, and we just kind of know that that's the thing right now. So sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's unconscious. I would say if you make an unconscious decision later, go back and ask yourself, why did I make that decision? What led to me making that decision? So that you might be able to replicate that consciously later. The facilitators that I interviewed, they participated in all of these dimensions. However, they tended to emphasize between 3 and 5. So what I noticed is people who were, so Max, who was very strong on purpose, he was also very, very strong on communication, and he was also very strong on, allowing the group to own the content. So, it's really, it's interesting to see what that is. And I'm going to invite you in a second to have a think about, your 3 to 5 domains. What do you focus on? Are you more task focused? Are you more people focused? Do you look at these things from a fairly simple agenda perspective, or do you really go into the intuition and the psychological safety piece? What's your style? I did find that facilitators' decision making was heavily influenced by their choice of process. So Lisa, for example, who works very much with energy, she was influenced by Otto Scharmer's Theory U. Otto Scharmer, he's a professor at MIT, and he works with deep listening. And he works with, generating new ideas. So his process was incredibly, that process is very, is quite organic. Whereas Marcus, he worked very much with structured process. Marcus and Peter, they like structure. This is the model. You do this, and then you do that, and then you do something else. So, I think it's that their process was very much process driven. But the creative domain, to me, that was the home of transformative change. When you let everything go, when you leave it in the hands of the group, and you create that psychologically safe space for difficult decisions to be made, and you hand that over to the group, that's where the magic happens. When it stops being about you and you needing to actually, get through this with an action plan. One of the worst things I think you can do is actually be driven to an action plan, because then you come back a month later and you say, how are you going with the action plan? And people say, I was busy, I didn't get to it. But if you can actually get into that creative domain, if you can actually get people to let go of the things that are holding them back and create the space to take on new things, well, that is where the magic happens. Of course, there are many limitations. It's a model. It has got the inherent bias of my interpretation. It was only 20,000 words, and it was over a 3-month time frame. So, of course, there are limitations to this. So for 5 minutes, I'd like to just invite us back into the Zoom rooms if we can, please, Sarah. And so based on everything that you've heard today, what do you think's your natural style, and how would you like to enhance it?
Okay, I'll just put people in the breakout rooms again. Give me 2 seconds.
Thank you.
Hello, is this the breakout room? I mean, is this the main room?
Yeah, this is the main room. Yeah.
Okay,
main room.
thank you.
This is the main room.
Okay, thanks.
It must break in 2 minutes because I have a 1 o'clock meeting. But I think the learning is really nice. Thanks so much to our
So-
facilitator.
How did you go? How were the conversations? We have 4 minutes left, and I'd just love to know from anyone, what did you take from that? How was the conversation?
I can give my 2 cent worth if you like. I've been teaching for over 20 years. I've just realized recently the power of facilitation, and it's never ever been about me. It's about the people. So I think I really want to transition into it's about the people, it's about the group, it's about bringing the best, and I think that aligns with coaching in many ways.
Definitely, Youssef. I love that. I love that analogy that you've drawn there, that parallel, actually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I think, Alex, also it is the trust, how to build up that trust among the team. So the focusing on those people, they will be, having that trust. So I think that is the most important,
Yes.
and it is one of the competence of coaching, I know. So I think this is also an important in the facilitator.
Yeah, I think that's a very good call out, that all of this is about how do you facilitate trust. We have 3 minutes left. I'm sure we have a couple more observations or questions. There are
If
so
I
many
may-
things.
If I
Please.
may, Alex,
Yeah.
thank you very much for your generosity and sharing this model with us all, which I'm sure a lot of us will find extremely helpful. And in our group, we also talked about what could trigger us and how we dealt with, well, how we dealt with triggers.
Mm-hmm. And
When you pointed that out, that
Yeah.
rang a bell.
And I mean, without disclosing any confidences, did you have any thoughts around how that might be done, or that you could do that?
Yes, we were talking about reframing, actually recognizing that we were being triggered, then understanding why we're being triggered, reframing. And if we notice that other members of the group were also or could also be triggered, then that would be useful information to give to the group at some point.
Yeah, great observation and insight. It's interesting, so much of this is on the people side, the observations that people are making. We're all pretty good at the task, but actually, of course, even though it seems obvious that facilitation is about people, when you actually peel it back, we feel safer and it's more comfortable on the task side. We have 1 minute. Who would like the final word? In that case, Sarah, I'm going to hand it. Oh, sorry, Youssef, please.
There's a great book I picked up recently. It's called Fearless Facilitation by Cindy Maxey and Kevin O'Connor. I advise everybody to try to listen to it.
Great. Could you pop that in the chat, Youssef? Could you pop that in the chat so that people can see? I think you said fearless facilitation. That would be awesome if you could put that in the chat.
Sure.
I love the comments. Thank you so much. So yes, it will be recorded on the YouTube account, and you are quite welcome to have a copy of the presentation as well. I will send that to Sarah. We are at 9 o'clock Sydney time. I don't know what time you are anywhere else in the world, but I'm going to hand over to Sarah just to close this out and wish you all a wonderful rest of your day.
Oh, thank you so much, Alex. Thank you very much indeed. Oh, I've stopped my
Thank you.
video. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely fantastic session. Thank you very, very much for your time. Yeah, as you said, this will be on the YouTube account. We'll send all attendees the links and also forward the presentation from Alex as well. So thank you again for the Community Cafe, and please do join us on the next one. Have a great day all. It's 10 a.m. in the UK, so I'm going for a cup of tea.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. Bye.